Hello and welcome back. I'm glad you're here with me as I'm setting up for Yule and December of 2021. This month I'm going with a theme of lanterns, mistletoe, bells, and frost. I really wanted to do a complete frost theme, but I felt like I needed a little more color once I went to implement it. At first, so my next stage after going with the frost only, I thought I would add in mistletoe. But as I was thinking more about what I personally associate with Yule, I thought of the Hermit tarot card and the way that card always makes me think of Yule. So I thought the lantern from that card would be appropriate here. Now, this isn't the exact lantern off any specific card. It's based off of a tattoo I saw online, but I think it works well in this theme. So when it comes to colors, I am using a good number of Tombows for this, Tombow Dual Brush markers, as well as Crayola Supertips and my Artist Loft water brush pens. So the one you see me using right now is a Tombow N60. So it's a gray that has a nice purplish tint to it. And I use it for most of the lettering in this as well as for my frost. In addition to N60, I'm also using N65 and N55 for my grays, and 228 for my gray-green color. That same Crayola Supertip green I've been using the past few months. The same Crayola Supertip yellow I used last month. And then 2 Artist Loft watercolor dual tip markers in the gold and orange colors that you see for the flames. When I was picking my fountain pen ink colors for the month, I really went back and forth a lot on that, but I ended up choosing, and you don't actually see them in the setup, I did not implement them here, but we'll use them in the month of the Lamy Crystal Agate, sort of gray-blue, and I've got to look up the name. It's the Vinta inks, Mermaid, Serena. And I got this from the Vanessa pen company out of Arkansas. I always, when I think about this ink, I want to say Vanessa instead of Vinta, but Vinta. And these are both gray toned colors that I thought would go well with the frost. So apologies here, the camera does bleed out some of what I'm doing. I was trying a new camera and I don't think it will be working for the future, but for the frost, I made a X and then drew a line through one direction and then added lines all the way around that to get my frost crystals. And I did these X's kind of close together so that some of them would overlap others and they wouldn't all be identical. I've seen some really pretty versions of this where they have the frost edges going down into nice points. And a few of these turned out nicely, but I did go back and darken up all of those central lines on my X's to make the shape of the crystal, the structure, stand out a little more. For the December that you saw me letter, I did go over with the same N60 marker and make some areas darker, and then I actually later went back with the N65 and traced around the edge a little just to give it some dimension. I'm thinking about going back with a white gel pen to add a few highlights, make it look a little more like ice itself, but we'll see. So this month's setup was, oh yes, you can see me. Oh, I didn't actually do that one in N65. This is with the Lamy Crystal Agate fountain pen ink, which again does look rather gray when it's going down here. So this month's setup took me quite some time. We've sped it up a lot here, but it was a lot of fun to work on. I enjoyed trying to understand how to draw the mistletoe so it would look like mistletoe and not like just another batch of greenery. And here you see I'm getting bold and just going in with my marker over what's already traced in pencil, so I'm not extremely bold, but I'm doing things out of order to just kind of change things up as I'm looking at this lantern. And I don't know if you noticed in the first lantern I did not mention it. For the glass globe part of the lantern, I use a lighter gray to do the highlights. And then for the flame, I layer the 3 yellows. So yes, Crayola Supertip, the gold Artist Loft, and then the orangey Artist Loft on top. When I was thinking about which plants to do for Yule, of course I thought about pine and rosemary because I always think about rosemary. But I thought mistletoe was a nice one to go with, both because of its references to fertility and the feminine, but also because of that. I don't know if you've ever read The Children of Odin, but in one version of The Children of Odin, mistletoe actually has a prominent role there, and I thought that was an interesting sort of remembrance for that. As I mentioned, I did initially want to just do frost. I had this idea of these beautiful swirling frost ice crystals that would look kind of like lace, but not quite. I couldn't exactly figure out how I wanted to do that. But maybe you're thinking, why frost? Why ice? Well, here in the northern hemisphere, Yule is generally cold, so there is that part. But Annie of Mirth and Reverence has a really great meditation on Yule where she talks about observing the frost as a reminder to be in the present moment and that things are changing. Things won't always be the way they are. And I thought this was especially appropriate for me this Yule because in my drawing from last year, I had a card that said this focus should be peace with unpredictability. So back to what I'm currently doing. You just saw me cutting out space in my Dutch doorish style there so that the December label will be visible, as well as space on the right and the bottom. The space on the right, I had marked it to be cut out when I wasn't sure where I was going to put my little mantra for the month, which I just mentioned about the peace with unpredictability. I ended up putting it on the bottom there and using the space on the right for more frost. But, if I'd been thinking, I might not have cut out all of that on the right so that I would have a little more space on the back for my trackers. But here you're seeing more of this frost, and I tried to line it up so that sort of whichever way it was opened, it looked like a consistent flow or piece of frost going across. I am really pleased with the purple tones in this gray. Initially, I had wanted to do grays with both purple tones and blue tones, but I didn't have a good gray with blue tones. So in the spirit of making use of what I had, just stuck with the purple tones. So you may notice here the calendar is a little wider than it is tall. I don't know why it is that some months I feel like I don't have space or whatever, but this month, especially the first half of the month, is going to be very busy for me. And so I wanted to give myself all the space I could, even if that meant my month boxes for each day weren't perfectly symmetrical. So that's why they're a little short and squatty but wide. Okay, so now I'm working on the trackers on the back, and here, like I mentioned before, I'm just going through and getting all of this frost in. I do like the way this ends up looking when I put the trackers in, to have the frost sort of coming in on it as if it were actually frosting over a window. For my accent colors for the tracker, whenever I get to putting those in, I use the gold of the Artist Loft to do the month trackers, and then stick with the grays for my tarot tracker. And this month, like the last month, I'm tracking basically everything the same. So I'm doing a self-care tracker, a food tracker, a tracker for playing with my kitty, what we're playing with together, my language learning tracker, exercise tracker, as well as the cleaning tracker. Like many folks, perhaps, I will be traveling during the holiday season, and so there will probably be a week or so where my trackers aren't used that much, but I still am glad to go ahead and just have it for the whole month so that maybe I can look back and see how that travel did impact it, and go from there. So here you see this is actually the third lantern that I've drawn in so far, and kind of trying to keep it loose. These, it's very tempting to try to get out a ruler and make everything perfect, but I think keeping it loose and a bit wobbly was nice, especially with my piece with unpredictability theme going on there. So one thing that I did not actually record, after I put in my trackers and labeled my calendar, I went back and added a mental inventory page. And that's because I know I will be thinking about what I want to do for my 2022 setup, and what my goals for the year might be, as well as things I want to be sure to get done before the end of 2021. So that is not included in this video, but just wanted to mention it will certainly be used this month as I'm planning things out and thinking ahead on what I want. Again, my apologies here for this camera. The desk looks really great, but unfortunately, the focus does keep washing out the pages when I'm writing on them, which is not very helpful for you. So yes, right there I'm putting in my tarot tracker. You can see I'm referencing the last month's tarot tracker to get my order the same for the cards. And now I'm going through labeling the days of the week. As you've probably noticed, I don't do that every month. I always start my monthly calendar on a Sunday, so that just makes sense in my mind, and if I ever try to do a Monday, I get very confused. So I don't really need the days, but it's nice to have them sometime. And so I went ahead and put in the moons as well as the associated signs. as I put that in, I thought that it needed a little green in the bottom left to balance out, so I did a little sprig of mistletoe, and I'm putting in my mantra there of the peace with unpredictability. I was excited the way I did the Y, like partially hiding under the mistletoe, though I did wish that I had spread it a little to the left and just let it go across the seam so it wasn't quite so squished. And that's it for the setup we're showing here. I have my cover page, my goals, and my end of the year cleaning, which will be a bigger list, my peace with unpredictability, my calendar, and the Dutch door back to the back with my tracker with all the areas I mentioned, and my tarot tracker. This is the page where I will put in the mental inventory later, then I go into the monthly. Thanks for joining me. Blessed be.